All right, in this video, we're going to show you the different types of football offenses that you may see on a Friday night, a Saturday, or even a Sunday when the NFL plays. Now, this is only a part one to what we hope to do a part two of all the offenses that are in football, but we wanted to show the main type of offenses and how they evolved from the beginning of football until what you see now, okay? So we're going to cover 5 different types of offenses: the single wing, the triple option, the run and shoot, the West Coast, and the air raid offense. So we're going to show you the founders of the offense and how it evolved to what you see today. Now, the beautiful thing about football is the evolution and the innovation that occurs from team to team. So if you're watching this right now and you don't exactly run that type of formation or that type of system, but you run a shell of it, let us know in the comment section below, because we want to know how you've taken this offense and evolved it into your own, or maybe your coach has evolved it into his own. Now, getting started with our first offense, which is the single wing. So this offense, it's still used by high school coaches today. We don't see too many colleges or NFL teams running this formation, but it's mostly high school teams that run this formation. Now, the single wing was one of the first formations and offenses that was ever invented. If you remember back in the early 1900s, they would direct snap it to what they called a tailback, and they would just try to ram it down the defense's throat. And it was a very physical smash mouth game as they drove it down their throats. It wasn't until Glenn Scobie Pop Warner, yes, that Pop Warner who the league is named after, who was possibly one of the greatest innovators to the game of football, took this formation and put what he called a spinner in, which was now more misdirections, players going left, players going right, and he would have his tailback, which they called in that day a spinner, spin around and fake and sometimes keep the ball himself to cause confusion for the defense. So it wasn't so much catch and smash it down your throat anymore. It was more of catch, fake, and try to get guys in the open by using the fakes. This is what we see commonly for the single wing now, is we see this fake guard pull, running power, counter, so on and so forth. Now, this offense differs from other offenses because it's more of a downhill running type of offense where they're not going to air the ball out 20 to 30 to 40 times a game. It's more to confuse the defense and to get their running backs into space by faking one way and then going misdirection. Now, some of the innovations that we've seen with the single wing, it started in the early 1900s, and then colleges started to pick it up. We see a Notre Dame box variation where they were able to put what looks like essentially a box on one side of their formation and then be able to take the ball and run that way. More common variations are the unbalanced wing, as well as the Yale single wing, which had 3 players to one side of the formation. But essentially what this offense is trying to do is to run the football efficiently, chew clock, and be able to control the tempo of the game. And again, that offense is slowly starting to die out a little bit. There are some high schools and a dedicated group that still run the single wing, and it still is an effective offense, but we don't see it as much at the college and the NFL level. Now, evolving from the single wing offense, we have what we call the triple option offense, and we still do see the triple option offense in today's game, okay, whether it be high school, youth with Pop Warner, college, or even sometimes we see it in the NFL, a different variation, which we're going to cover. But this offense is essentially making one person wrong, okay? And the reason they call it triple option is because the quarterback typically has 3 options. 1, he can give it to the fullback. 2, he can keep it himself. 3, he can pitch the ball to another player. Now, the triple option was designed to put the defense in conflict, okay? And the triple option served as a base to what we see in the spread game today. So essentially what the triple option is the quarterback's going to put the ball in the belly of the fullback. If the defensive end crashes down on the fullback, he's going to pull it out and he's going to run. Now he's reading the outside linebacker. If the outside linebacker crashes to him, he's going to pitch it out, okay? So there's the 3 different layers of options that the quarterback has, thus the triple option. Now, the triple option was first seen in 1941 by Missouri head coach Don Farrat. And he was the first one that we've seen run this triple option style where he just used the fullback and then he had an underhand pitch, not necessarily the overhand pitch that we see in today's game, but the underhand pitch to another player. It wasn't until 1965 where Billy Yeoman introduced the split veer with his Houston team that essentially had two guys in the backfield where he would run a straight dive with the fullback and then use his triple option to pitch the ball out to another player. This split veer was wildly popular for Houston as they were able to dominate most of the 60s. Now, towards the end of the 60s, around 1968, Emory Bellard comes through and creates what's called the wishbone. Okay, and this is for the Texas Longhorns, and the Texas Longhorns dominated most of the early 70s and the late 60s by using this wishbone offense. Again, it was a three-back offense that was constructed mostly like a wishbone. That's where it gets its name from. And he would have the ability to run his fullback dives as well as the triple option. And this became a staple for most of the powerhouse college programs. Now, Emory Bellard runs it. 1969, Barry Switzer, yes, from Oklahoma, picks it up, and he starts to dominate teams with this triple option attack. So we have Texas running it, we have Oklahoma running it, and these teams are just straight out killing other teams because no one can stop this triple option attack that is so hard to defend because it takes discipline and it takes players doing exactly what they're supposed to do, because if one player loses discipline on the fullback dive, on the quarterback, or even on the pitch, everything goes haywire, and then that's how big yards are gained. Now, fast forward to 1981, Tom Osborne and the Nebraska offense start to pummel teams with this triple option combined with their I formation power attack. So now you didn't know what to get. So now players were getting kicked out on power or they were being optioned. Okay, so defensive ends were put in this weird situation where, do I squeeze down? Do I stay where I am? Coaches really had to plan for this, and that's why Tom Osborne, with his wishbone offense combined with his eye power style of running the football, was able to dominate most of the 80s with this triple option power style of attack. Now, just another year later in 1982, Fisher DeBerry innovates the offense even more. He sees what we see for the first time as the flex bone offense. So it's essentially a triple option offense, but the wings, instead of being in the backfield, are now split out to the tackles. And if Coach DeBerry was the Air Force head coach, if you watch any Air Force game, even present day, you'll see a variation of the flex bone where they have those two wing backs on the tackles as well as the fullback in the backfield. So this is where the offense start to innovate and coaches start to get more creative using motion to get the player with triple option involved, toss sweeps, fullback dives, and so on. Now, this next part is where the triple option saw its biggest innovation that we've ever seen in the game, and it's still running true 20 years later. 1999, this coach named Rich Rodriguez from Glenville State innovates this offense, which he calls the spread offense. But by accident, one day, he finds this play and calls it the read option. And the story goes like this. One afternoon, Glenville starting quarterback Drenning bobbled a snap, and on one of these zone blocking plays was unable to hand the ball off to the running back. Drenning tucked the ball himself and saw the backside defensive end crashing down the line of scrimmage to tackle the running back, who in fact did not have the ball. After the whistle, Rodriguez asked Drenning, the quarterback, why did you do that? Why did you run that way? And he said straight up, the end pinched. Okay, and thus Rich Rodriguez had this idea. I'm going to put the ball in the belly of the running back, and then once he goes downhill, I'm going to pull it, and then the read option's born. Now coaches are taking that flex bone style, that wishbone style of triple option, and they're using it from a 2x2 spread game where they're able to take the football, put it in the belly of the running back, and have another player get involved in the triple option. This was one of the biggest revelations that we've seen in football as far as spreading the ball around the field and using the triple option basics, combine it with the spread option, and thus the innovation of the RPO, which we'll talk about, and the triple option essentially married itself to create what we have as the read option. The next offense that we're going to talk about is the run and shoot, which eventually evolved into the spread offense. Now, the run and shoot is extremely interesting. It got its start by a name of Tiger Ellison, okay, Glenn Tiger Ellison. He was a high school football coach who was looking to innovate the game in a certain way because his teams weren't doing too well. So one day he's walking by a park and he sees a bunch of kids playing football, normally as me or you would when we were a kid running around. And we saw as the kids weren't handing the football off, they were throwing it. Every single play, throwing it. So the story goes that Tiger Ellison's team is 0-4-1. and as he's coaching at Middletown, Ohio, and he's on the brink of the first losing season in his school's history, dating back to 1911. So what he does is he puts in this innovative offense called the Lonesome Polecat, which is actually a lot similar to what we see nowadays as a swinging gate, where you put everybody over here and you only have a center and a quarterback, or a center, quarterback, running back right directly behind the football. So coach was able to score points this way by catching the football and having different options to throw the football based on what the defense gave him. Now, the kids started to have a blast with this because they were throwing the ball over the field. So Tiger got this idea, okay, what if I snap the football in a regular formation, spread some guys out, and then have them dictate the routes and where I throw the football? Now, this was the base foundation of what the run and shoot was, and eventually how the spread offense came to be. Now, Coach Mouse Davis took this concept that he got from Tiger Ellison and made it into his own thing, into what we see as the run and shoot today. Now, the run and shoot is an offense that's really hard to stop because it's all based off of receiver routes based off what the defense gives them. So, for instance, if a coach calls a play and just labels it a choice route, now the receiver has the choice to run his route based off of the defense alignment and what the coverage is. So Coach Davis was able to take this concept and put it into a spread system with 4 receivers, 5 receivers, and absolutely torch defenses with this concept. The run and shoot is still widely used today as an offense where the quarterback and the wide receiver have to be on the same page, but it essentially takes advantage of space that the defense is giving to the offense. If they're playing in zone coverages, receivers are simply just going to sit in the open spot and wait for the football. It's an offense that doesn't take big, strong players. It takes athletic, smart players to be able to field the defense and to put themselves in the right position. That way the quarterback can deliver the ball. Now, the next offense that we're going to look at is the West Coast offense. And this word is thrown around all over the NFL, whether it be talking about John Gruden, Andy Reid, Mike McCarthy, all these guys that stem from the Bill Walsh coaching tree. The West Coast offense is a really big buzzword, but what exactly does the West Coast offense mean? So let's start where the West Coast first got its name from. So of course it resonates from former San Francisco head coach Bill Walsh. But Bill Walsh actually got his start from when Bill coached in Cincinnati. Now, the story is that Greg Cook was Bill Walsh's quarterback in Cincinnati. 6'4", 200 pounds, had a real strong arm. He had 5 touchdowns through 5 games. However, Greg ended up getting hurt, so they had to go with their backup quarterback named Virgil Carter. Didn't have a strong arm, however, was very mobile and was very accurate underneath. So Bill had to do something to create situations for Virgil to succeed. So what Coach Walsh did was he established a horizontal passing attack, okay? So instead of stretching the ball downfield and throwing it as deep as they could, he wants to stretch it out horizontally, meaning shorter passes, okay, and stretch the defense to follow guys in crossing patterns and short to intermediate throwing routes, okay? So if you look at the offense's basics, it essentially is a long handoff that they're doing between getting the ball out to the flat, okay, or getting the ball out to an underneath receiver. These horizontal throws allow for high percentage completions and run after the catch. That's why if you look at older clips with Jerry Rice catching the football, he's usually catching it, and then his run after the catch is usually 20 to 30 yards, where he gained a majority of his yards. Now, Coach Walsh took this to San Francisco, where it was obviously dubbed the West Coast offense, and his quarterback, Joe Montana, and of course, Jerry Rice thrived in this system because Coach Walsh developed a system where everything was based off of footwork, okay? 3 steps and a hitch, 5 steps, no hitch, let it go, 7 steps and a hitch. All of his offense had rhythmic cadence to it where the quarterback could hit his drop and then deliver the football on time. So that's why when you see Jerry Rice and these guys hit these big plays off the West Coast offense, it was usually Joe Montana taking his drop. By the time he got his back foot in the ground on a hitch or a plant step, that ball was ready to be delivered based on the coverage that was shown. Now, another thing about the West Coast offense is that it's extremely flexible in its play calls, and it usually has a super long name to it. Just to give you an example, strong right, slot Z right, spider 2, Y banana, Z over. All right, that may seem like a foreign language to all of us, but essentially it gives the coach the flexibility to change any piece in that offense to what he wants it to be. Now, NFL coaches like Andy Reid were able to take this offensive concept of horizontal stretching and still use it in today's spread game. And that's where we see the innovation come from. Coach Walsh's formation were mainly two back, okay, whether it be split back, I formation, and he was using that fullback and running back into the flat. We do see a little bit of this with Coach Andy Reid using fullback Anthony Sherman to get into routes, but a lot of what he's doing nowadays is from a spread look, short underneath passes, and he has guys like Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, who are faster, that can get the run after the catch and produce big yards. But this is the basics of the West Coast offense, is stretching the field horizontally. That way they can get their playmakers the football essentially the fastest way possible with a high percentage chance to catch the football and then be able to get upfield. Now, our last formation is the air raid offense, okay? And before we actually get into the air raid, if you want to see each one of these formations broken down more, okay, we go over formations, we go over plays. We have a whole playlist dedicated to all of this, so make sure you search our other videos for that. We'll also link it in the description below. That way you can check it out. But we want to give us a brief overview of how these offenses came to be, and then those other videos will have more detail between formations, plays, and so on and so forth. Now, the air raid offense is another popular buzzword that a lot of teams use, and this is one of the most common offenses found in high schools as well as colleges, and it's starting to leak into the NFL as well, where the name is exactly how the offense is played. It's air raid, okay? They're trying to throw the ball 30, 40, sometimes 50 times a game, and essentially what they're trying to do is take advantage of what the defense is giving them. Now, the air raid originates when Hal Mumme and Mike Leach were coaching together at the University of Kentucky, and they went down to Florida to a coach's clinic, and they saw a coach running a 2-minute drill. And they both looked at each other and said, why can't we run that 2-minute drill always? Okay, because teams are so used to huddling up, running a play, huddling up, running a play, and no one really innovated yet of just going as fast as they possibly can to keep the defense on their heels. Now, what does speed for an offense do to a defense? It keeps the players on the field, okay? So if they get tired, they have no choice but to stay on the field unless they call a timeout or they're running players back and forth, which usually doesn't happen too often, okay? So this quick aerial attack kept the defensive backs tired as well because they got to chase receivers all across the field. So Coach Leach and Coach Mumme decided, how can we make this as fast as possible, throwing the ball down the field? So they created a simplistic system where they have short play calls as opposed to what we just saw on the West Coast that has a very long play call. Air raid has short play calls. For example, a play call would be early 92, and everyone knew what they were doing, and they could throw tags on the play if they needed to. But that simplistic style of play call allowed offenses to play fast because they didn't need to think too much. They could just get on the football and then run it as fast as they possibly can. Now, the good side of running the air raid is obviously you score a lot of points quickly because you're able to push the ball downfield to a tired defense as fast as you possibly can and get your playmakers in space. And that was the concept of the air raid, was why be in this tight formation and try to pound it down the opponent's throat? When we have athletes, we have speed. Let's spread the ball out and have our quarterback make good decisions and get the ball downfield. So air raid teams typically score a lot of points and are ringing up the scoreboard. The downside to scoring a lot of points fast is your defense now is on the field longer. So your offense may have a 40 to minute drive, and then the defense got to come back on the field for 3 minutes. Now, if the offense scores quickly in 20 seconds, the defense has to come back on the field. So a lot of times where if offenses even go 3 and out, the defense is back on the field. So this is one of the downsides to running the air raid, but it's extremely popular because of the point potential that offenses can put up by simply getting their athletes the football in space. So those are the 5 different offenses that we're going to cover in this video. If you want to see us cover any more videos, let us know in the comment section below. Also, as mentioned, be sure to check out the individual videos that we've made. It covers a lot more in depth of these formations, of these play types, and how these coaches develop these systems a little bit more in depth. So again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.